I screamed at God in my car. Not a frustrated whisper, a full throated, rage filled scream. I had done everything right, prayed before every decision, sought godly counsel. I checked every box. And when I thought he was finally giving me the redemption that I'd been praying for, he let it all fall apart. And in that moment, sitting alone in the dark, I was angrier at God than I'd ever been in my life. What happened next changed how I understand intimacy with Him forever. I'm Katie Ann, and if you've ever been too angry at God to even pray, if you've felt like your rage disqualifies you from His presence, this episode is for you. Hey, friend, welcome to Beyond Believing. I'm Katie Ann, a certified life coach, single mom of 5, and a woman of God walking alongside divorced Christian women who are rebuilding their lives with Him. Today's episode is deeply personal. I'm sharing the angriest prayer I've ever prayed in my life. The moment I thought my fury would separate me from God forever. And what He taught me about intimacy, honesty, and what it really means to abide with Him when you're so angry you can barely breathe. Here's what we are covering today. First, why anger isn't the enemy of intimacy with God. It's actually a doorway to deeper relationship when you bring it directly to Him instead of burying it. Second, the difference between fighting God and wrestling with God, and why one leads to bitterness while the other leads to breakthrough. And third, what happens when God gently shows you your own heart in the middle of your fury, and how that moment becomes the foundation for the kind of abiding you've been desperate for. By the end of this episode, you will understand that the most spiritual thing you can do with your anger might be the very thing that scares you the most, bringing it straight to God. If you're ready to stop pretending you're not angry and start experiencing real intimacy with God, the kind that can handle your whole heart, not just the polished parts, I have a few spots open in Selah Healing. It's 12 weeks of transformation through weekly coaching, personalized healing roadmaps, and on-call support when the rage hits and you don't know what to do with it. Details at coachkatieann.com/call. Let's dive in. Maybe you're 6 months post-divorce, maybe 3 years, and you're carrying this quiet fury that you're terrified to admit. You're angry at your ex for moving on. You're angry at yourself for not seeing the signs sooner. You're angry at God for not protecting you from this pain. And when well-meaning Christians tell you to just spend time with God or lean into His presence, you think, how? How can I abide with someone I am this angry at? So you do what most of us do. You bury it. You paste on a smile at church. You say the right words in prayer. You perform spiritual disciplines like checking boxes, hoping that if you just go through the motions long enough, the anger will fade. But it doesn't fade. It actually festers. And secretly, you are terrified that your anger has disqualified you from intimacy with God, that He's disappointed in you, that you've crossed some invisible line, and now you're too far gone for Him to want you close. Friend, let me tell you about the day I discovered that the opposite of all of that is true, because the most honest conversation I've ever had with God actually started with a scream. Anger is sacred territory when you bring it to God. Let me paint you a picture of one of the darkest moments of my life. I was about 3 years post separation, little over that. I had done all this work, therapy, coaching, prayer, diving into scripture. God had changed me. I was living in this beautiful peace with God. I had fully embraced this season as his bride. I genuinely believed no man could ever offer me a relationship as complete and whole as what I had found with him. And then I met someone who seemed to prove me wrong. This man felt like redemption, like the answer to prayers I'd been too afraid to even fully pray. He was a man of God. He read scripture with me. He talked about God's plans for our future together. He seemed to see me, value me, want to care for me in all the ways I had been starving for during 17 years of marriage. I approached it very carefully. I prayed before every decision. I sought counsel from wise, godly people I knew and trusted. Multiple character references from trusted men and women of God. I watched him from a very far distance, 4 months, before even beginning to have a conversation. I thought I was doing everything right. And I genuinely believed that God was writing a redemption story. And then one day, it all ended. Not because of abuse or betrayal or anything dramatic. It just ended. And as I drove home alone in my car that night, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had lost my marriage. And now I had lost what I thought was God's plan to restore it. That's when the scream came. I remember it so clearly, sitting in my car in the pitch black, nothing but the street lights, and this sound erupted from somewhere deeper than just my throat. Grief and fury and confusion all at once. And then I started yelling at God like I never had before. Why? I screamed. Why did you let me believe? Why did you let me hope? How could you let me do this again? I said things to God that night I'd never said before. I told him I was exhausted, and he knew it. I reminded him, as if he needed my reminding, that I didn't ask for this. I accused him of dangling hope in front of me just to snatch it away. I demanded to know why everyone else seemed to get their promised partner while I got test after test after test. And you know what happened? Nothing struck me down. The earth didn't swallow my car, and God didn't abandon me. In fact, I felt him closer than I had in months, because for the first time in my life, I had brought my whole heart to God. Not the polished version, not the version that said what I thought he wanted to hear. My actual heart, my angry, broken, confused, but finally honest. And here's what I know. Anger is sacred territory when you bring it to God. Psalm 139 says, God knows our thoughts before we think them. Do you really believe that your fury catches him off guard? That you're somehow hiding it from him? David wrote in Psalm 13, How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? In Psalm 22, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? These aren't whispered prayers. These are cries of anguish, accusations, questions that would sound like blasphemy if we didn't know God can handle our honesty. But here's what I need you to understand about anger, and this is crucial. Anger is actually a secondary emotion. It's a mask. It's a shield, a way of protecting ourselves from feeling something much deeper and much more painful underneath. Think about it. When you're angry at your ex, what's really underneath that? Fear that you wasted years of your life? Shame that you didn't see the signs? Grief over the future you'd thought you'd have? Maybe worthlessness because he moved on so easily. When you're angry at God, what's actually hiding beneath that rage? Fear that he doesn't actually see you? Grief over the loss of the life you prayed for? Shame that maybe you did something wrong? Betrayal that he didn't protect you when you needed him most? Anger is what we show the world because it feels safer than exposing the wound beneath it. Anger makes us feel powerful. The emotions underneath, they make us feel vulnerable, weak, exposed. And here's the thing. We can hide anger from the world. We can actually even pretend to hide it from ourselves. We can bury it, numb it, paste on a smile and say, I'm fine. But we cannot hide it from God. He already knows what's underneath. He sees the fear, the shame, the grief, the sense of abandonment. He's just waiting for you to trust him enough to let him show it to you. And when you bring your anger to him, when you scream it, rage it, wrestle it out with him, you are actually practicing vulnerability. You're saying, I trust you enough to stop performing. I trust you enough to let you see what I've been hiding from everyone else. And that's when he gets to teach you something you've never fully believed. You are safe with him. Not because he removes the pain, but because he stays present in the pain. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't withdraw. He doesn't shame you for feeling it. This is the power of the wrestle versus the fight. Fighting, God says, you caused this pain, so you owe me relief. Wrestling with God says, I'm willing to let you show me what's really underneath this anger, even though it terrifies me, because I trust you won't abandon me when you do. And that brings us to the difference between fighting and wrestling. There's a difference between fighting God and wrestling with God. And understanding that difference is what separates bitterness from breakthrough. Let me show you what I mean. Fighting God says, you owe me an explanation. Change your plan. Fix this mess you allowed. You're not good. You're not trustworthy. You failed me. Fighting God pushes him away. It builds walls. It creates distance. Wrestling with God says, I don't understand what you're doing, but I'm not walking away. Help me see what you see. Help me understand what you're building. I'm holding on until you bless me. Wrestling with God pulls you closer. It creates intimacy. It demands engagement. Genesis 32 tells us about Jacob wrestling with the angel of the Lord all night. And when the angel says, let me go, for it is daybreak, Jacob responds with, I will not let you go unless you bless me. Friend, Jacob didn't win that wrestling match because he was stronger than God. Let's just make that clear. He won because he wouldn't give up on the relationship. He held on until the blessing came. That night I was in my car. I was fighting God. I was demanding He justify Himself to me. I was making my pain His fault. But then, very gently, very quietly, I felt Him shift the questions back to me. It wasn't audible, it wasn't dramatic, but it was unmistakable. He asked, "Do you want to see what I see?" You see, I had been telling myself, God is punishing me. He let me hope just to crush me. I can't trust Him. And that thought was creating a lot of suffering for me because I was making God responsible for my pain instead of responsible for my transformation. I was focused on what I lost instead of what He was trying to show me. I was demanding my version of the story instead of trusting. But what if I told myself this instead? God is protecting me from something I cannot yet see. My anger is revealing what I've been worshiping more than Him. Hebrews 12:11 says in the Message version, at the time, discipline isn't much fun. It always feels like it's going against the grain. Later, of course, it pays off big time, for it's the well-trained who find themselves mature in their relationship with God. And that is when God began showing me my own heart. And friend, what He revealed changed everything. Now, shortly after that emotional outburst that I had screamed and accused and demanded, it was actually the next morning. I was sitting in my kitchen having time with God. And very gently, very lovingly, I felt Him say, "Let me show you what I see." And what followed was one of the most tender corrections I've ever received. He showed me every moment in that relationship where I had ignored His gentle redirection. Every time I had asked for His blessing on my will instead of seeking His will. Every conversation where I had chosen what felt good over what was wise. And every prayer I had told Him what the answer should be instead of asking what He wanted to teach me. Every time I didn't slow down to truly ask Him before I proceeded. And here's what broke me open. It wasn't condemnation. It was clarification. The relationship ending wasn't God being cruel. It was God being merciful. He was protecting me from building my life on a foundation that would never hold the weight of what He actually wanted to give me. The anger I felt at God, it was actually anger at myself for ignoring His voice. But I had been so desperate for the story I wanted that I couldn't hear the story He was writing. This is what I see with so many of my Selah clients. They come to me furious at their ex, at God, at themselves, and underneath all that fury is the same wound. They've been worshiping the idea of receiving the promise more than worshiping Him. They've been more devastated by human rejection than concerned with God's direction. Their identity has been more tied to relationship status than their relationship with God. And friend, God will let you choose your idols, but He will not bless them. And when they crumble, because they always do, He will be there, ready to show you what you were actually seeking all along. Here's what God showed me in my kitchen that morning. I had made that relationship an idol. I had been seeking comfort, security, and validation from a man instead of from God. And my anger at God was actually grief over the idol he was removing. But here's the truth I needed to hear, and you need to hear too. God's correction doesn't feel like condemnation. It feels like relief. It feels like finally seeing clearly after walking in a fog for months. I sat in my kitchen that morning, remembering how I had screamed at him the night before, and I felt more at peace than I had in years. Not because my circumstances had changed, but because my heart had been exposed, cleansed, and realigned. And that's when the true abiding began again. Jesus says in Matthew 11:28-30, "Are you tired, worn out? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace." Friend, this is what surrender actually looks like. Not performance, not pretending you're not angry, but bringing your whole heart, fury and all, and letting him show you what's really underneath it. Okay, friend, so what do you do with all of this? How do you move from fighting God to wrestling with him? Let me give you 3 specific ways to apply this truth this week. First, bring your anger to God first, before anyone else, before you call your friend, before you journal about it, before you try to numb it with Netflix or scroll it away on social media. Go to God first with the raw truth. Say what you're actually thinking. Use the words you've been afraid to say. Remember, he already knows. You're not informing him. You are joining him in honesty. Pray out loud if you need to. Scream in your car if that's what it takes. But bring it to him, not around him. Second, ask the wrestling question instead of the fighting question. Instead of, "Why did you let this happen?" ask, "What are you trying to show me?" Instead of, "Fix this mess," pray, "Change me." Instead of, "I don't understand your plan," say, "Help me trust your plan." Write these questions down. Come back to them when the anger rises again, because it will. And third, look for your idols and give God time to show you. Ask him, "What have I been worshiping more than you?" And then listen. Don't rush this. His gentle correction won't feel like condemnation if it's truly from him. Journal what comes up. Be honest, and then surrender it. These are the exact kinds of exercises I walk my Selah clients through every week. If you want help learning to wrestle with God instead of fighting him, if you're ready to bring your whole heart to him, anger and all, and let him show you what he's actually building, book a call with me at coachkatieann.com/call. This is deep, personal, spiritually transformative work. And because of that, I only take on a handful of clients at a time because this level of transformation requires dedicated attention. The link is in my show notes. God isn't afraid of your fury. He's not intimidated by your questions. He is not surprised by your accusations. He is waiting for you to bring your whole heart to him not just the parts you think that He wants to see. The most spiritual thing you can do with your anger isn't to manage it, suppress it, or feel guilty about it. It's to wrestle it out with God until He blesses you through it. You are not behind. You are being refined. You are not disqualified by your anger. You are being invited into deeper intimacy through your honesty. So stand tall, straighten your crown, and remember whose you are, even when you're furious with Him. If you're done pretending you're not angry, if you're ready to bring your whole heart to God and let Him show you what He's actually building, book your call at coachkadian.com/call. And if you're not already subscribed to Beyond Believing, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss next week's episode. And if this resonated with you, please share it with another woman who needs permission to be honest with God today. You can find me on TikTok and YouTube at Coach Katie Ann. All the links are in the show notes.